What's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you all had a great start to your work week, a great Monday. We're going to talk about tonight, really breaking down what it looks like for the whole entire first half of October, and even take a little bit of a peek at mid to even portions of late October. Looks like the pattern is going to be dominated by warm weather. We're going to talk about how warm is the potential for a cold front anywhere in the future. We are in October. I know a lot of folks, especially in the South, and even areas in the Mid-Atlantic and just areas that are just warmer than average right now. A lot of people are wondering, when is this humid air, when is this above average temperatures, this late summer-like weather going to get out of here? Well, I'll tell you right at the dot, I don't see anything concrete evidence-wise. It shows us that we're going to get into a better pattern. But we're going to talk about what's going on because it's a very annoying pattern in place that we're trying to shake to get some more fall-like weather going on. Towards the latter half of the video, we will briefly mention the tropics, but there's nothing to worry about in the tropics at all. It remains relatively quiet as far as land-threatening scenarios or anything like that. So, altogether, relatively speaking, it's pretty quiet weather. So I do want to thank y'all for, tuning in regardless of when I'm making a video talking about a hurricane that has a chance to hit the mainland, or either if it's just small talk like talking about how warm or how cool it could potentially be. We are in the transition months, so sometimes there's just not always going to be a lot to talk about, but we'll continue to keep pumping out the content, and I definitely will keep uploading videos daily. So if you guys have not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button, like the video if you like it. Appreciate the continued support. There's a way to join my channel. I don't have any perks or anything right now, but that is something that I'm going to add in probably next year. But it's just a way to support my channel monthly, and it just goes to improving my setup and things like storm chasing, which when the weather does pick up, gets more active. I plan on doing big time snow chases this year. I will get back to storm chasing. There just really hasn't been anything to chase in the last month or so. So let's get going here. So briefly, we will mention there's a lot of areas getting a lot of rain right now. Where I'm located, we still haven't gotten a drop of rain. Like I said in the video last night, I don't remember the last time it rained. Looking at the latest HRRR model, we continue to be rain on and off tropical downpours through areas of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Carolinas, and it's still a lot of rainy conditions here in the interior, Northeast, and the New England area. We'll get into tomorrow morning, and a more larger plume of moisture will work its way through Alabama and Georgia and South Carolina and get into the southern Appalachian Mountains. It will kind of fizzle away, but it looks like the main axis of rain is going to be in this area, which we've been talking about the last couple days, mainly talking about Alabama and Georgia will be the hardest hit areas into the upstate of South Carolina. But just rainy, cloudy, overcast, damp conditions through the majority of the week, especially for the southeast. Let's talk about temperature-wise. So, it's been warm. Well, it's going to continue to be warm. 6 to 10 day temperature outlook shows, and this is stretching from the 10th to the 14th of October. This is well into mid-October, well above average, and the confidence is very high. It's going to be the case too. This is just about as cut as dry as you can get. Well below average temperatures out west, well above average temperatures out east. And this is typically how it works. Normally when Alaska is cold, that normally means the eastern U.S. is pretty warm. And that's because basically, and we'll talk a lot on this as we get into the winter months, but what you call the polar vortex, or, that's what some people call it, but basically it's something that spins around the North Pole, and when it's strong, when it's really, really strong, then all the cold air is bottled up north. When it weakens, then sometimes you can get a disruption with the vortex, and that causes troughs to dip down south. So basically, when you get a disruption in the vortex, basically it causes an intrusion of cold air to dip down further south into North America. Now that can happen anywhere. That can happen on the other side of the world in Russia, but right now it's very strong up there. And no cool air anytime soon. You look at the 8 to 14 day range. This stretches from the 12th to the 18th of October. I mean, we're getting, at this point, it's just we're wasting the entire month on above average temperatures, which is a real bummer for me because I love fall weather. And it just looks like this pattern is going to stick around. This pattern that's in place is a very stubborn pattern. It's hard to shake this. We eventually will. It's inevitable that the pattern will change. But this is just it's just going to be warm, for the majority of October for not just the eastern U.S., but even the Midwest. I think there'll be a stout cutoff from somewhere in the Midwest or South Central U.S. where basically a cold front is just basically going to be out there. It's just going to be a boundary between two big air masses. So you look at the temperature wise, if you're asking, well, what do you mean above average temperatures? What kind of temperatures does that put us at? Well, if you take a look at the latest GFS, we're getting into tomorrow. You notice you're seeing these cooler air temperatures down south. Well, that's because it's rain-cooled air. Doesn't mean you got a cool fall, crisp like 70 degrees in Atlanta like it's showing right around this area. No, that's a humid, rainy 70 degrees, kind of like what y'all saw today. But where it isn't raining, it warms up quite a bit. So, for example, Wednesday, they want to show a lot of rain in and around the Carolinas, but it doesn't want to show as much rain in eastern North Carolina and areas of southeast Virginia. So temperatures rise into the 80s where it isn't trying to forecast as much rain. So as we're getting into late week, you notice where it's not raining, it gets very warm. Look how warm it gets in the south central U.S. and Oklahoma and Texas. Upper 80s to the 90s, very warm temperatures. Even up here in like interior New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, it's getting into the 60s and 70s. Depending on where you are, what elevation you are, that's pretty well above average. I mean, it's not super above average, but that's warm up there for this time of the year. And the only thing that's going to save areas of the Northeast is these little trough digs that happen to make it just far south enough to cool these areas down. So if you're in Maine, it's a whole different ball game. These cold fronts are going to bring some of y'all's first freezes of the year and some more chillier conditions. But look at all the warm air as we get into this weekend. Very, very warm weekend for the entire eastern U.S. and middle part of the country. The only areas that might be saved is this little backdoor cold front, this little trough right here digging just over the Northeast. So this might bring some cooler than average, not cooler than average, but some relief for areas of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. But that won't last very long. Eventually they warm back up. But I still think the Northeast could be spared a little bit. But areas in the South, as we get into this time next week, still very warm. You see all these 80s and 70s popping up. And then when you start to get maybe midway next week, start to look for maybe a cold front trying to sneak through. And then look at this cool air digging down here from a trough. There's some cold air damming shooting through. There's some signals middle month to late month that maybe the pattern breaks. But it's hard to tell. Really is. So basically, if you're in the Southeast, expect upper 70s to 80s, humid conditions for the next at least 10 days, I would expect. These are dew points. Notice I love looking at dew points when you're trying to find the differences between two air masses. So dew points in these greens and blues are sub 50 degree dew points. So you notice all the dry air as we're getting into midweek this week stays out west. It actually retrogrades a little bit more west, backs up as in. And look at all these dew points in the 60s all the way up into Canada. The only areas that have crisp dew points are up here in the Northeast, well up in the Northeast. I'm not talking about Pennsylvania Northeast. I'm talking about northern areas of New York State Northeast, points further northeast. It's the only areas. If you're in Boston, you might get a little bit relief temporarily, but the moisture levels are going to fluctuate because you're not getting a wholesale cold front moving through the entire eastern U.S. like you want to see when you want some concrete fall air. But you get into this time next week, dew points still in the 60s and 70s. In fact, in a week, it might even be even more humid. But then you start to get maybe a signal. It's hard to call it a signal because there's nothing concrete. But then you start to see big-time cold front. This is the cold front that could potentially spark a severe weather outbreak in the Midwest that we're not really going to talk about right now. But this is a sharp cold front. Then again, doesn't really clear the U.S. Then you see a signal for maybe some tropical energy super far out. Hard to take it serious when it's being that far out. But I know it's going to be hard to see. I'm going to have upgraded computer stuff here in the next few weeks where you're going to be able to see this. But this is just the European showing the same thing. See these dew points in the 60s and 70s as we get in the middle part of this week. Look at all that moist air, all these higher dew points into the eastern U.S. No relief in sight, guys. I will admit it. It doesn't look good. The Euro finally at the very end, at 10 days out, releases a big-time cold front. It starts to release this cold front. And this looks like a really big cold front right here. So be interested. This might be the next big weather system we talk about. But we got to get a lot closer to it to figure out what's going to happen. But as far as temperature anomalies, the reds are above average temperatures. The blues are below average temperatures. And look at this. As we're working our way through the week, we're getting into Thursday, we're getting into Friday. The reds just dominate the entire eastern half of the U.S. And, you get pretty far out. And look at this. It's got the blues out west, and you got the reds and pinks in the middle part of the country and the eastern part of the country. And this is October 13th, so we're getting pretty far out, and this is still dominating the pattern, well above average temperatures. So it doesn't look like we're going to shake this anytime soon. As far as the tropics, I'm watching this area down here to see if it's going to show up a little bit more. Showed up the last few GFSs, the last few GFSs, and it's this signal right here that shows up at about this time next week. It shows some tropical energy trying to fire up here around the northern areas of the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico right here. And then it develops into something. You're also showing some kind of spin up right here. Just some tropical energy spinning around. We have to watch to see what this is going to do. As far as a signal in the ensembles, it's there, but it's so far out that it's hard to take it serious. But here it is. Here's that signal from the operational run. But it's very far out. It's over 10 days out, so it's hard to really even talk about it much. But that's all I got, guys. Nothing too crazy going on. Appreciate everybody, and y'all have a blessed Monday night.